Also tonight, a victim of priest sex abuse in Buffalo is speaking out after being offered a settlement from the diocese. He tells I-Team Chief Investigator Charlie Specht the offer is an insult for the pain he has suffered.
Michael Whalen started the tsunami of cases here in Buffalo.
Michael Whalen was the first sex abuse victim to step forward in March and say he was abused by Father Norbert Orsolits in the 1980s.
I'm not afraid anymore. I want to let my voice be heard.
Since then, claims have been filed against more than 100 priests. The FBI is investigating, and other victims have been offered hundreds of thousands of dollars in reparations. But Whalen was shocked to find out the diocese has offered him less than $50,000 for his pain and suffering.
What they offered me just re-victimized me because it was so low. And my life was ruined by this man.
Whalen and victims advocate Robert Hodson say the payout wouldn't come close to covering his years of therapy and rehab for drug and alcohol problems after the abuse.
And make no mistake, Michael's abuse was horrific. There wasn't anything that in any way would cause anyone to think that Michael Whalen was not viciously abused.
7 Eyewitness News has obtained internal documents that show that more than a dozen people have now come forward to say they were abused by Father Orsolits. The documents also indicate that church leaders knew about Orsolits' behavior earlier than they originally let on. In March, diocesan lawyer Terry Connors was asked a simple question.
Terry, in the early 80s, when the reports came in on Orsolits, at that time, why didn't the diocese go to the cops?
The reports that we received were, I think the first one, I don't have the chronology in front of me, but I don't think the first one was received until much later than the 80s, report to the diocese.
But this internal diocesan memo shows otherwise. The memo, sent from former Auxiliary Bishop Donald Trautman to then Bishop Edward Head, quotes Trautman as saying, "I spoke with Father Norbert Orsolits. Please recall that I had him in the office and confronted him on the question of sexual approach to a teenager years ago." The date on that memo, May 6, 1987. The diocese allowed Orsolits to minister for another 16 years.
If the Diocese of Buffalo knew about Father Orsolits in the 1980s, why did they sit on this? And how long have the attorneys who are working for the Diocese of Buffalo been familiar with these allegations? Also, since the 1980s? Michael Whalen has been suffering with this for decades, thinking that he was all alone, when Terry Connors, perhaps, or the bishop himself could very easily have alleviated some measure of that suffering.
Other documents obtained by the I-Team show a total of at least 13 men have now come forward to the diocese with claims of abuse at the hands of Orsolits. But the diocese never defrocked Orsolits, so he's still on the payroll. The church cut these checks for the accused pedophile, including one from earlier this year.
And I fight tooth and nail to pay my bills and to pay my mortgage, to make sure that my kids are fed. And like I say, if it wasn't for my kids helping me out, my girls, it would be tough on me.
Whalen says he can't even afford to fix the shingles that blow off his roof in the winter.
I don't have the money. I got 9 cents in a checking account. After paying bills, I have 9 cents.
And while Bishop Malone pledged to sell his mansion to compensate abuse victims, Whalen was outraged upon learning the bishop spent $200,000 to renovate his new home.
I mean, that would help me. That would help me to fix my house. So it really hurts. It really disgusts me that happened, and that's happening.
Now, Whalen plans to reject the offer and hopes to file a lawsuit against the diocese if the Child Victims Act is passed next year. We did reach out to the diocese, to Terry Connors, and also to Bishop Trautman, and we did not hear back. For the I-Team, Charlie Specht, 7 Eyewitness News.